Security scan. Please stand by. Scanning. Do not move. Security scan successful. You now have full access to all files. Welcome to Conspiracies, Inc. With your host, Bryan Dattilo. Do you believe?
I am Bryan Dattilo. This is Conspiracies, Inc. Thank you for joining us as we kick off our very first season, the alien controversy, the alien cover-up, the alien conspiracy. I am joined again today, part two, with my beautiful mother, Peggy Dattilo, National Enquirer editor and alien abductee extraordinaire. And she was sharing some wonderful personal stories. And we got cut off because I didn't pay my
because my stories were too long.
That's right. So now I got a longer Zoom, hopefully, and we can iron this out. So welcome, Mom. Welcome back for part two, Peggy Dattilo. And you were telling us how, yes, it is in our family. A lot of people have had sightings and experiences regarding alien UFOs that they've seen together.
Mm-hmm.
And also you were saying that you had a lot of personal experiences. You were telling us about your experience with the Nordics, what we thought were the Nordics. Right. Do you want to continue and do you want to back up a little, or wherever you're?
Well, I think we pretty much covered the Nordics. We covered those two in the doorway, the tall and short alien in the doorway. We talked about the experience with my friend in the backyard where we saw the UFOs and had a time loss of 3 hours.
Right.
And we were talking about when we got cut off, we were talking about what I think is the biggest experience I have, the most lengthy one and the most powerful. And just to recap a little bit on what we started out with, I was asleep in bed, and suddenly I felt that there was someone in the room with me. Uh-huh. And I opened my eyes and I saw what I thought was, well, first I felt something. I felt somebody touch me. And I thought my mother had passed recently, and I thought, gosh, maybe it's the spirit of my mother, because as you know, I see ghosts too. Yep. And I said, Mom, is that you? And I said, if it is, touch my forehead like you did when I was a little girl. And I felt somebody touch my forehead. So I was thinking, oh my gosh, it's probably the spirit of my mom. Then suddenly I see my sister Barb's face right in front of mine. And she looked though like she did in high school. And she passed about 3.5 years ago. And I thought, well, Barb, you look great. And she was like, thank you. And she seemed to be enjoying her spot, in the spotlight, her place in the spotlight. And she seemed to be liking the fact that I realized it was Barbara. Mm-hmm. But then somebody kind of walked into the room. And I couldn't see, I could only tell you that I knew somebody walked in the room. And she looked up and seemed upset that this person was there, or this thing was there. And she turned around like they had given her an order to walk away. Mm-hmm. So she turned around and literally disappeared, but seemed upset that her chance to do whatever it was she was supposed to do wasn't working. That's the impression I got. Next thing I saw was my father's face. But it didn't look like my dad. It did, but it didn't. His eyes looked funny. He had like very squinty eyes that were elongated. Mm-hmm. And I looked at him and they were funny eyes. They looked funny. They didn't look like his blue eyes that I remember. Right. And he'd been gone for a long time. And I was like, Dad. And then I thought, no, I don't think so. You're not my dad. Your eyes are funny. Right. And then all of a sudden his eyes changed, as if on demand, he was trying to become more like what my dad looked like. Yeah. But still he wasn't, I didn't believe it was my dad. And I felt like I was, go ahead.
You felt like you were being deceived. We had discussed that. Okay.
I felt like I was being duped, and I didn't like that.
And maybe they were scanning your thoughts to make you more secure, to bring those images out to you.
Well, that makes sense to me, that they were trying to relax me by showing me people that I would recognize rather than showing me who they really were.
Right.
So
Okay.
the next thing I felt is I felt like I was being lifted out of bed and not standing on the floor, but sort of floating upright next to my bed.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking, oh no, not this again. And they started, like, I started heading towards the wall.
Right.
And
And you went through the wall.
I went through the wall. And as I went through the wall, it was almost like a real soft styrofoam feel, that foam that you were pushing it aside. And I remember thinking, I can't do this. And then I thought, well, I've done this before. I can do
Right.
it.
Yes.
So then I start rising up, and I was suddenly on a street that looked real dark and very
Mhm.
doomsday-ish. It was like dark clouds and everything. And there was a line of people, like almost like you would think at the end of the world when people are lining up for food or something.
Yeah.
It was like a real foreboding feeling. And I was floating above all these people in line. And I looked down, and there was a young woman there, and she looked very straggly. Her hair was straggly, and she had a baby on her back. And I said to her, are we in danger? And she said, we certainly are.
Yeah.
And I said, this isn't good, is it? She said, no, it's not good. And the next thing I knew, I was in the cosmos, as so to speak, in outer space, rising up, floating up, 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 and in a very kind of relaxed feeling. And I wasn't afraid. I was kind of like really mesmerized by the stars that I could see, and the blue, dark, dark blue of the sky, and these little things that looked like the trail on a shooting star, but they weren't. Nothing was moving. They just seemed to be here and there in the atmosphere.
Mhm.
These like lines, white lines.
Okay.
And then I kind of looked over to my side, which would have been my right side. Looking at it from like here, it would be my left, but it was actually on my right side because
Mhm.
I was kind of facing forward. And there were these two beings that I've come to realize since then were probably reptilians.
Yes.
They look like Ninja Turtles, like you had when you were little. And
Well,
they
now
had-
that's funny. It's funny. It is funny to call them Ninja Turtles because it's kind of what they look like, but they do have certain belts that they cross over.
yes,
They do wear certain vests that store energy and that store some of that house their technology. So it's funny to call them Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but it's also true because so many people account that they have, what looks like even some types of weapons or a bag or some
Right.
kind of vest that holds crystals that transform energy. But go ahead.
and they had very cut like abs, like defined chest.
Right.
And they were kind of a greenish gray color. And I felt that they were saying to me, don't be afraid. And they thought I was afraid of them. But ironically, I wasn't afraid of them. I was
Right.
like, I'm not afraid of you. And then I said, I have some questions for you. Of course I did. I'm a journalist. And I said, what did I ask him first?
You asked them about the beam coming
Yes,
down.
I said, when you have a beam come down out of one of the ships, is that beam to over a power plant to bring energy back up to make your vehicle, move? And they said, no, think of it like an elevator where people go down and people come up through this
Yep.
beam.
Yep.
And I was like, okay. And then what else? I asked them one more thing too. I asked them, do you remember what it was? I can't remember the other thing that I
You asked them about the
them.
power plant. You asked them about the
Yeah.
beam.
I asked them, I don't remember what else.
But
I'm
we can
sorry.
move on from that because
Yeah.
we're
Okay,
further
so the
along in the
next thing I
story.
know,
Right.
I see a shiny disc, like a silver disc,
Right.
and it's huge, like a flying saucer, and it's huge. And I'm thinking, I'm going there, I know that's where I know I'm going to end up in there. Then I don't remember how I got in. I just remember that I was in a room opposite. Well, I went into this craft, which was like a submarine. And even though I said I've never been in a submarine, it's the kind of thing you see on the movie, but yet I felt the dampness. I could hear like the noises. It was very quiet, otherwise very dim artificial lighting, kind of a cream color. Everything was kind of a cream color inside.
Yep.
And the next thing I knew, I was in like towards the center of this disc, I was in a little waiting room, and I looked down and I had on like a hospital gown, and I was seated, and like there were chairs, and 2 chairs over, like with nobody between us, nobody else in the room, was a young woman, and she was staring ahead like she was drugged. And I tried to say something to her, but she just seemed like she was in a trance.
Right.
And I realized she looked to me like that girl I had seen with the baby on her back, but there was no baby around. And I thought, why am I so aware and so, can think about things and rationalize things, when she's so out of it?
Yeah, I said the same thing.
I remember that when you were there, I remember that you had said the same thing. And it was interesting because when I saw that on the podcast, I was like, oh my God, that's what happened to me.
Okay, but we're going to stay on course.
Yes, we're going to stay on course.
And we're getting back to where we left off. We're almost there.
Then somebody or something came and got me, like it was my turn. And I don't remember seeing who got me, but I walked right across the hallway to this room that looked like an operating room. There was a big light above the table. There was a double door that looked like it was metal, but it looked wide like a handicap door.
Right.
There were tall beings that were thin, but I can't tell you exactly what they look like. I feel like they were like grays looking.
Right.
And they had on lab coats, and they were milling about in this room. And there was this stainless steel table, almost like an autopsy table.
Right.
And I remember thinking, oh God, we're going to do this again. Like it was something I knew what was coming. And the first thought I had was, and I think I telepathically told them, I do not want that thing where you stick things in my eyes again and probe me with those things.
Right.
You're not going to put needles in my eyes and stuff, right? And nobody said anything. They were like, relax, everything will be fine. And I laid down on this table, and then there was somebody who leaned over me, and he was very interested in examining my head. And I kept saying, remember, you're not putting those needles in you're not going to probe me like you do usually. And
this was the guy who looked like Bob Lazar.
No, that was the time before when I had that.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
No Bob Lazar in this one.
Okay. So this guy came up to you.
So he was leaning over me, he seemed very interested in my head, examining my head. And at the time I had a sinus infection. Now that I'm thinking about it, I thought, well, is he intrigued by that, or is he going to heal it for me?
Right.
And I don't remember what happened, if he did or he didn't, but he was very involved with that. Then all of a sudden they turned me over on my stomach. And that's when I was like, oh, no, I don't like this at all.
Yeah, that's when the trouble starts.
Yeah, that's when the trouble started. And they said to me, and I was thinking they were going to try to mate with me again, like I was going to try to have sex.
Okay, all right.
And I'm sorry, but I know.
Go ahead. We can get past that. We're almost to the point where we left off.
Yes. So all of a sudden, I felt like I said to them, are you trying to mate with me? And they said, human beings should be very flattered that we want to mate with them, that we want to, build something together with them. They should be very honored. And I said, but you don't understand. I'm older. I can't have offspring anymore.
Right.
And they were sort of like, we know that, but they weren't worried about it. They didn't seem to be worried. So then I don't really remember what happened right that moment. But the next thing I remember is I stood up. And again, another little gross part, but it felt like I was letting go of a bunch of water onto the floor after that. And I thought, oh, I just, had an accident on the floor. And
just say that part again.
I stood up and water seemed to come out almost like urinating. And I thought, oh no, I just had an accident on the floor. but nobody seemed to be concerned about that.
Okay.
And then the next thing is, I don't remember, to tell you the truth, if that's when that happened, that I said something to them at some point. Why am I remembering so much of this one and I don't remember so much of the other things that happened? And they said it's time for the truth to come out, and it's time for people to realize there is alien life out there, and we're kind of like allowing certain people to remember their experiences and have more experiences, which is interesting considering, the Pentagon briefing this morning admitting that there are UFOs and and that, that they aren't from here.
Right.
And so it was like, wow, it is time, I guess they're going to come out. So then the next thing that I knew, I was back on my way down. I don't remember being in a tube or anything, but I do remember floating like a feather, like this way, like coming down like a feather. When you drop it, it kind of goes like this. I remember swaying and coming down. And again, not being afraid, observing all the beauty that was around me and kind of enjoying it. And I remember thinking it's taking a lot longer to go down for some reason than it did to go up.
Right.
So then I end up back in my bed. And I remember feeling at some point, and I had my nightgown on again instead of that lab coat. But I remembered literally feeling the front of it, and I could feel a tag in the front. And I was thinking, oh, my nightgown's on backwards. That's weird. And so then I was not able to move. And I felt like I was paralyzed and couldn't move. And then I kind of remembered that people have told stories about when they are kidnapped or abducted, that they are paralyzed and can't move.
Yes.
And I, little by little, I started being able to move my finger, my thumb. And I suddenly realized that as I was becoming more conscious, there was somebody with me sitting on the bed, like in the middle of the bed.
On your bed?
On my bed.
Okay.
With me. And I felt like it was a nurse type of person who was assigned to be there until I came fully conscious and could move and everything. Like if you've been put out for an operation and there's somebody there watching you and checking your vitals and stuff. And I said to this person, and it seemed like a very friendly person. And I said to this person, are you a male or female? So I must have somehow seen it telepathically or something. And she said, neither. And I said, well, that's not possible. And she said, all things are possible. And I said, well, are you human? And she said, I'm a cyborg. And I was
no, first you said, are you human? And didn't she say, well, kind of, sort of?
Yeah.
And then you said, what do you mean? And she said, well, I'm a cyborg.
Yes. And then she said she's a cyborg. And then she said, do you want to ask me anything? And I said, is there a God? I don't know why, but that was important. And she went, yeah, like that, like.
Oh, that's the part she was unsure of. Okay, sorry.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, that's what happened. And then I said to her, what is your name? And she kind of hesitated. And then she said, Sharakuka, right, was her name.
Okay.
And I remembered thinking, what else was there anything else?
Well, wait a minute, back up a little. You did ask her if there was a God, and she said, yeah.
Yeah, she was like, yeah, sort of, yeah.
Okay.
But, and then I did ask her one more thing too, and I can't think of what it was, but Sharakuka was her name. And then as I started to feel my feet started to come back like tingly, like when your legs are asleep or something.
Yep.
And then my thighs, and then my hands. And
Right.
then when I was really kind of conscious again, I looked and she was not there. And I couldn't feel her presence anymore. Like she had done her job and then she left. And I checked my nightgown again. And again, I felt like there was a tag in the front. And I kept thinking, why is this on backwards and inside out? And then the next minute I touched it again and it wasn't. It was back to where it should have been, the right way. And then I think that was the end of it. And then eventually I fell asleep again.
And do you feel that these things keep happening to you? For what reason, and what do you think the future holds for you? Because remember, you did say, that guy said, not only do you know me, and you've seen me before, but you're going to see me again. How are you prepared in the future to tackle this? Are you willing to record like I've been begging you to do? Is sit there with a recorder on your—
I'm sitting there with Yvonne Smith. I already talked to her and I said,
well, no, I want you to be regressed, but I also
Right.
want you to start recording some of the times you sleep. I always
Right.
ask people to record them when they sleep, and I think that's just stupid, but you never know what you're going to get
right.
if these things
Well,
are happening.
I do think, in all honesty, like with this revelation coming today, with Congress coming out and Adam Schiff and all these people, they were very hesitant in some of their answers, but in a lot of them, they answered, and it was nothing we've ever heard them say before.
Well, what did they say? I missed it. So update
Well,
me.
see, I didn't watch the whole thing, honey. I was getting packed because I'm going to Ireland today.
Right.
But they did talk about the UFOs not being—
Well, now they don't call them UFOs.
No,
anymore.
they call them—
This is unidentified
UAPs.
aerial phenomena.
Yes, that's
Right.
what they were calling them through the whole thing.
But
And
it's
they were
interesting
saying—
that they're looking for a new label other than UFO, because then they can say, well, we don't know much about UFOs, but we know a lot about unidentified aerial phenomena.
And it was funny because everybody made fun of the Space Force when Trump started it a couple of years ago.
Right.
Now today they're talking about, well, the Space Force is in on this and we're going to figure it out. And with the military and the help of the Space Force, so all of a sudden it's front and center. But a couple of things they said that really got to me was they admitted that that the UFOs were not like anything we have. They mentioned that the UFOs moved not like things that we're familiar with, like in the direction of the wind velocity, and that they were moving quickly against the wind, which is not anything we're familiar with.
Right.
And then it said that, and it was interesting because at one point, I think it was Adam Schiff, asked somebody on the panel, you say that you have some like 11 reports that are, that are unidentifiable from the military.
Right.
Have you had reports from regular citizens about things like that? And they said no. And I was like, I reported, I talked to Sam Moranto and I called my MUFON people. And I was like, why are you saying that? No, people aren't reporting it. People are reporting it every day. But I think, and they also said something about it becoming more acceptable. And they kind of took credit for it becoming more acceptable to talk about it, that they've been letting the media do the Tic Tac videos and show them, and that they thank you very much, US government. What?
Did you say Tic Tac videos?
Yeah, aren't those it's a Tic Tac video of a Tic Tac.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought you just
mispronounced. They call those long, elongated, jelly bean shaped UFOs Tic Tacs now.
Oh, Lord.
So it's a TikTok video of a Tic Tac.
No.
But, they said that because they're bringing it to light, making it a lot more acceptable to talk about. And I was like, oh, thank you, because we weren't going to talk about it otherwise.
And that makes up for 125 years of not telling us a thing. Thank you.
And then they talked about something called the I wasn't familiar, but it was some big reported UFO thing. You have to listen to it. I sent you the link that was on CBS News this morning. Yeah. And they talked about an Admiral Wilson and his complaint that he wasn't able to get the information on the UFOs. And, you know, it just seemed like they're definitely opening the door wide up. But then after all this revealing, they said, we're going to end now to go into closed door talks about this. I was like, okay, well, you gave us a little tip of the iceberg. Now you're going to talk about the real stuff when you go behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing what they can still get away with while still coming out and admitting that they're at least there and admitting the existence. But
well, they
now,
talked about the Nimitz too, about the reports from the Nimitz. Now you're familiar with that, right?
A little bit.
San Diego. And when the aircraft or the boat ship spotted UFOs and recorded some of them. And
is this the UFO that was going in the water that submerged?
I think so.
Actually broke into the water and disappeared.
I think so.
They had a couple that they were tracking, and then they actually had a couple, I think, go into the water and create a huge disturbance in the water and everything, but didn't miss a beat as far as. I
just want to find out more. I actually met somebody yesterday who was talking about their UFO experience and their mother, who saw 3 UFOs over the Kankakee River recently. And she didn't want to tell anybody about them. She thought they were like frog catchers or something, or fog catcher. And they had lights on them, but then they started rising up and it was disc shaped. And she had 3 different experiences. And then the girl that I was speaking to was telling me that, and she's going to watch your podcast, so she'll see this, but she was telling me about a night when she was in bed with her boyfriend, and she was awakened suddenly by lights in her room. And she went to the window and looked out and saw a UFO there, kind of a tubular shape, but very huge and very wide and enormous. And it had red and green lights on it, which I know a lot of people report. Yeah. And she said, I tried to wake my boyfriend up to come and look, and he wouldn't wake up. It was like he was drugged. He was sleeping. And I kept saying, whatever his name was, I come to the window, look at this. And she said that, that it seemed to last for a long time, and he never woke up. She couldn't get him to wake up afterwards.
And it was a cigar-shaped cylinder?
Yeah. Yeah. But she said it was thicker than a cigar for some reason. Sure. Because I asked her, I said, you mean like a cigar-shaped thing? And I just want to add too, that the night that I had that experience that we just talked about, the long one where, I was on the ship. I remember when I first woke up, I looked at the clock before this happened when I was feeling weird, and it said 4:00. And when I looked at it after I came back and was fully awake, it was 6 something. I just want to say that. And of course, I've had dreams, I'm sure, that they feel like they last all night, but it was interesting because I looked at the clock both times.
Right. So it could have been a loss of time as well.
Yeah, it might have been. Because
no way that was 2.5 hours.
No.
You would say that was realistically about what, half hour?
Well, you mean that it actually happened?
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to say because you don't know how long you're floating through space. You don't know how long you're waiting in that waiting room. You don't know how long you flew over all those people in line. So it's kind of hard to say if it's just that I'm remembering highlights of it. And the girl said this ironically yesterday when I talked to her. She said, I remember it, but then I don't remember going back to bed, going to sleep, or anything afterwards.
Well, this is the confusion a lot that comes up is it dimensional? Are you in your astral body when you're making these trips, or is your physical body going, or is it a combination of the two? Because our astral form holds so much physicalness. There is physical contact on the 4th dimension. This would be something that, this would be something that would instigate physical memory, because your astrological body can retain those physical memories as well. So, there's a big, even with what happened to me, I know that my physical body went somewhere, and I have a feeling that even if it didn't, my astral body would be just as physical on that plane.
Mhm.
So I don't know.
That's
I mean,
the
I
way I
feel
always
like
felt about
when we
ghosts.
go up the static cloud, are we in our astral body, or is it our physical body and we're being relocated?
But how do we go through walls in like my bedroom? How do I move through a wall and feel like hear like that squishy feeling like I'm going through the wall?
Well, that also could be
Mystery.
technology that these beings have. So they could have figured out the technology to break down those physical barriers,
I
to
think you
put you
once told me it was like Star Trek when they beam it's almost like that where they break down their body and beam them someplace else and then their body manifests again.
right. Well, you're getting into teleportation then, because now teleportation is actually taking your physical and your astrological body and relocating it somewhere else. So it's almost like one and the same. It almost doesn't matter because you're still going through it and coming back with the physical memories of all of it as if you were, really there.
Right, right.
So that's what always shocked me about it is it's so physical. It wasn't a mental thing that I did to myself. This is something physical that happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't control it when it's happening. You can only make logic out of it
Or
because
try
you
to
have the
make
interior
logic.
dialogue going
Yes.
on.
Like what's happening now? Who is he? I need to ask this. And all the time that these things were happening to me, I was so conscious of, I've got to look around and make sure I can remember everything I can remember to tell Bryan.
Right. I always
I
do that when
thinking.
I think the same thing. I'm like, mom's never going to believe this one. She's never going to believe. I got to remember that guy doing that because that's going to be weird.
Right.
But it's.
By the way, Bob Lazar said hello.
Hi, Bob. Yeah. I still want to get him on the show. So you are my booking agent as well.
Is he?
No pressure.
I thought he passed. No.
No.
Oh, well, then
Yes,
we'll go
yes.
after Bob Lazar.
Yes. He's on the.
Especially since we made such a star out of him in the
I know.
last 2 episodes.
How are we going to tell him that he looked like an alien? That's going to sound bad.
Yeah, well, maybe they thought I would see pictures of him and then I would feel comfortable because I know he's involved with UFOs. He's not like a,
Well, that's
clown
part of
from the
them
circus.
scanning. That's really actually part of them scanning your brain,
Right.
creating images for you to feel better and more secure. And maybe they did pick that out of your subconscious, that because they would have the technology to do that if they're capable of communicating telepathically already. That's the first gateway to it. So
Next thing you know, I'll be seeing in my room Sam Moranto and Ruben Urarte. Yeah, Urarte.
Yes.
Yeah, I usually can say that. But it's just, and as far as like, I know we're going to next season get into ghosts, but I always wondered about ghosts being maybe something from another plane, from another dimension.
Well, obviously, yeah.
Because and I got a lot of them in this house, so.
Well, you're definitely coming back for next year. I want you to have a great time in Ireland and be safe.
Thank you. All right.
And do your UFO research on all the hot spots we went over.
Yeah, I'm staying in a cottage by the sea where you can see nothing out there but the stars. And it has a big telescope.
Perfect.
And literally it's on the East Coast. And the pictures we've seen, it shows the stars up in this dark sky, so bright and so many stars. So I'm really looking forward to maybe I don't think my cousin who's traveling with me is looking forward to maybe seeing a UFO in the backyard, but that's all right. Maybe they won't wake her up for it.
No, well, don't be abducted in front of her. That would shock her.
I'll try not to. Maybe they'll make it so she won't remember if I am.
Or drag her along, because it's always good to have a good skeptic with you.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'll tell them. Now she'll never get on that plane with me.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
Thank you so much, Mom. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your personal experience and all your insight and all your influence through the Inquirer days and the Bob Pratt stuff and the Alan Hynek stuff and the Betty Barney Hill stuff.
I did leave out very quickly that Alan Hynek actually tried to hypnotize me when we were together.
Well, tell us really quick.
Yeah, we were at a dinner and there were
we got 4 minutes.
Ufologists that were there, including Bob Pratt, the president of the United States, of the National Enquirer in Calder, and we were at a dinner in Palm Beach, and it was Alan Hynek. I was sitting right beside Alan, so we got to talk quite a bit. And at one point, he said to me, because I said to him, you know, I always thought about UFOs and stuff, but I hadn't had an experience yet. He said, well, you probably have had experiences. He said, let me see if I can, hypnotize you. And he tried like 2 or 3 times. And every time I kept getting sick to my stomach and like coming out of it really quick. And he said, you probably did have something very traumatic happen to you because you aren't allowing yourself to accept it.
Wow.
So that was interesting. So we never did get to be hypnotized. Of course, we're in a restaurant and everything, but I just kept getting sick. Like I didn't want to go there. So that was interesting.
Well, maybe with Yvonne Smith someday in the future, we could
She's so sweet. I love her.
Televise you being hypnotized and see what's going on.
That's right.
I did it. You could do it.
That's right. All right, honey. Well, I will talk to you while I'm gone. And if I see a UFO, I'll turn on my video camera for you.
All right. Be safe and I'm keep you posted. I love you. Thanks again.
Bye.
You can find us on Apple Podcast, iHeart, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find all of our social media. On Twitter, it's Bryan_Dattilo. And on Linktree, that address is @Conspiracies Inc. Podcast. Thank you for joining us.